Am I the asshole for hooking up with my best friend's ex and now we're in love? Disclaimers is not my story time and send me on Instagram. My bestie and I have known each other for over 10 years. Our lives have always been intertwined because we have the exact same careers and actually work at the same job. So her and I spend a lot of time together. My bestie and her ex broke up in 2020. The reason they broke up was because my best friend met another guy. When she broke up with her boyfriend, she didn't tell him that she met someone else. She told him that she fell out of love with him. He was so heartbroken that he actually decided to move away. After he started following me on Instagram and he would reply to my stories every now and then. But I would never engage because hello, she's my best friend's ex. But sometimes he would comment really nice things. So I started replying back. Now here's a little info on me. I'm a very, very shy girl. I've never had a serious relationship and I'm 23 years old. The only time I've ever dated is if guys come up to me and ask me out. Otherwise, I would never go on dates. T and I kept messaging. I started realizing we had a lot in common. A few weeks after that, he told me he was going to come into town to visit. And he asked me if I wanted to meet up with him for dinner. Obviously said no at first, but then I realized why not? I mean, nothing would happen, right? Wrong. First off, he offered to pick me up from my apartment. He opened the door for me to get in the car, and we went to a really fancy restaurant where he paid for everything. He made me laugh the entire night. I'm really attracted to guys that can make me laugh. Suddenly, underneath the table, I feel him grab my thigh. Part 2 is... Am I the asshole for hooking up with my best friend's ex and falling in love with him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. That's when I felt him put his hand on my thigh underneath the table. I was actually really shocked. And we turned to look at each other and we both burst out laughing. It wasn't awkward or uncomfortable at all. It's like we had already known each other for so long because we actually did. Mind you, we're at a restaurant and he sits closer to me and asked me if he could kiss me. I mean, how romantic. I said yes. And for about 5 minutes, we were full on making out in the middle of the restaurant. It was like fireworks were going off. I had never in my life felt this way about any man. Like I said in part 1, I'm super shy. I'm so shy. No, I really am. But I guess because I knew him from dating my best friend, I felt very comfortable. After that, he took me home and nothing happened. He was only planning to stay in town for a week, but he decided to extend his stay so that he could take me out on a few more dates. We went rock climbing, had a beautiful picnic. He even taught me how to surf. For a full week, we hung out every single day. My best friend started suspecting something. Started asking me who I was hanging out with so much, and I told her I didn't want to tell her yet. She knows that I'm seeing somebody. After our 7th date, he asked me to be his girlfriend, and I said no. Told him it was just wrong for us to do this since he was my best friend's ex. And he told me that neither of us owed her any loyalty and that he found out that she actually cheated on him and left him for another guy. I just couldn't say yes. She's my best friend. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for hooking up with my best friend's ex and falling in love with him? Disclaimers in my story time. I sent me on Instagram. Just couldn't go through with it even though she cheated on him. That's when he told me that he would date me to marry and not just to hook up. And then the words came out of his mouth. He said, I love you. Then I just blurted it out too. I mean, I was in love with him. We'd only been hanging out for 2 weeks, but it was so magical. Then we did it right then and there at the beach. And I had sand everywhere, if you know what I mean. After that, we went back to my apartment and he had another confession. He told me that when he was dating my best friend, he always thought I was very pretty and that he always regretted having met her first instead of me, and how I was the complete opposite to my best friend. Then he told me about all the times that she would flirt with other guys in front of him, and that she would openly DM athletes and celebrities in hopes that they would text her back, and that she would turn around and be super jealous and controlling of him. And I have to admit, I know that my best friend is like this. It's been 6 months now, but we still have a long distance relationship. Actually brought up me moving to LA to be with him. It would mean I would have to leave my dream job. Told me that he would help support me until I got my own job. I'm supposed to go visit him in a week, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna propose. I haven't told my best friend that I've been dating her ex now for 6 months. That we're totally in love, that the relationship is amazing, that he wants me to move in with him, and that he really wants to marry me. Knowing her, she'll probably throw hands, and I don't really want to lose her friendship. This whole time, I managed to convince her that I was single and that I was just dating guys. She recently broke up with her dude and asked me if she should text her ex, aka my boyfriend. I said no. What should I do? My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend, and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sent me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment. She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. And this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked me to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, and how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. When her and I went to lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, he only deserves a really good girl. That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me and that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I told her that I didn't feel bad and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing. But at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid and that she was not gonna walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her. And that's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch. That I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why? His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time. And my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do? My husband refused to touch me on our wedding night and says that it's my fault. Our wedding was only 2 weeks ago and to this day he still has not touched me. Here's the thing, we had an arranged marriage. My family is extremely traditional and where we come from it's normal to have arranged marriages. When I was 12 years old, my parents told me who I was going to end up marrying. This all seemed very normal to me growing up because I saw my sisters and cousins doing it. But now that I'm in this, I realize how terrible it is. My now husband didn't actually grow up in the same country I did. In fact, we had only met a week before the actual wedding. I had a really bad feeling a month before the wedding though. So I told my parents I did not want to marry him. That's when they told me that if I didn't go through with the marriage, they would disown me. I would have nowhere to live, no money, and no family. So, of course, I agreed to marry him. A week before the wedding, my parents hosted a dinner for his family and mine. When he came in through the door, I was happy to see that he was actually attractive, but he didn't look at me once throughout the whole night. Part 2 is up. My new husband refused to touch me on our wedding night and says it's all my fault. We finally met a week before the wedding. When he came in through the door, I was so happy to see that he was actually attractive. But this man barely looked at me the entire night. Parents presented us to each other and he glanced at me. That was it. He was extremely cold and basically didn't speak to any member of my family. The only person he did speak to was my father, of course. I spent the entire dinner trying to make eye contact with him, but not once did it happen. Thankfully, the dinner only lasted about 2 hours and his parents and him left. As soon as they did, I burst into tears. Also, I know I'm a beautiful girl. I've had many suitors come to my house and ask my parents for my hand in marriage. They had agreed to this arranged marriage so long ago that it never even gave any other guys a chance. The worst part is that one of the guys that asked to marry me a few years ago, he and I went to the same school, got along, and dare I say liked each other. At least he would look me in the face. I told my parents that he didn't even look at me once. My dad said that I was completely overreacting, but my mother agreed with me, thank God. She told my dad that my fiance's behavior was completely unacceptable, and that the least he could have done was at least said hello to me. My mom was also upset that he didn't even say hello to her, and that he was openly disrespecting our family. I tried to convince my dad to cancel the marriage, but he said no. Part 3 is up. I've been hooking up with my coworker and we're both married. I asked him to end things and he said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. After we hooked up at the hotel, we were addicted to each other. We started showing up a half hour early to work to just make out in his car. And for lunch, without fail, we would always go to the same hotel, which was near our store. It was so fun and exciting. But here's the thing. He has his wife and I have my husband. A little about me and my husband. We've been married for over 10 years and the relationship has become really stale. My husband never really touches me or even flirts with me at all. He's always focused on work. He started traveling for work last year and it actually made the relationship better. Having him at home was so annoying. He never made the effort to talk to me, and when I would ask him what was up, he would just get really angry. One time I tried to kiss him and he actually pushed me away. So you can see that I was pretty neglected. Jake told me that his wife and him basically have the same relationship as my husband and I. He even told me that he's not attracted to her and that they never even had chemistry before. Their parents pressured them into getting married and he had to go with it. But I'm gonna choose to trust that he's telling the truth. Remember I said my husband was traveling for work? Eventually I started inviting Jake over to my house whenever we had days off. He was in charge of scheduling, so he would manage to give us some free time together. And no one at the store ever suspected anything of him and I. Before I knew it, I was completely in love with my coworker. Sometimes he'd come over and we'd just watch movies and eat lots of food. We were in a relationship. Part 3 is up. My coworker and I have been hooking up and we're both married. I asked him to end things, but he said no. Disclaimers are now my story time. I sent him on Instagram. After months of him coming to my house and us going to hotels, I was fully in love with this man. One day my husband comes back from a work trip and starts apologizing. He tells me he knows he's been neglectful and that he promises to change. I asked him if he was interested in someone else and he said no. He told me he's been depressed, but he didn't want to tell me. And now he's on medication and he's feeling a lot better. And he asked me to give him a second chance. Every single part of me wanted to blurt out that I was in love with somebody else, but I just didn't have the heart to do it. So I said yes to giving him another chance. The next day I saw Jake and I told him that I couldn't keep going. Then he flat out said no. He said that he had already asked his wife for a divorce and that he wanted to marry me. And then he told me that he loved me, which was the first time he'd ever said it. And I told him that I loved him too. Then he gave me a beautiful promise ring. He told me I need to leave my husband so that we could be together. I really want to, but I can't see myself leaving my husband, especially knowing that he was depressed. So here's what I did. I told my husband that I had waited for him too long and that I just simply wasn't in love with him anymore. He agreed to give me the divorce, but he still wants to live together. How can I tell my husband that I'm in love with somebody else? Help me, what should I do?